All right, you guys ready to do this today? Today I really wanted to do something different that we haven't done before on this channel. Let me kill some music. And that's to actually do an edit live. I think a lot of times I make videos for you guys and they move pretty quickly, and some people like it when it's a little slower. And I think sometimes the edit makes it seem like I never make a mistake, which I always do. I always do. How you guys all doing in the chat today? Good to see you out there. Krishna Sigdal, Insane Grape, 5-octave, Blue Strike Pro. So listen, if you can hear me okay, if everything sounds okay, give me a thumbs up. If there's any issues, let me know in the chat and I'll try to fix. But it's really good to see you guys all here. So this is a different thing. I think that you guys may have noticed that I put up a little GIF, how do we say it? GIF, on my community tab, because I had figured out how to take the Batman logo and spin it around. And a lot of people have asked me, hey, Daniel, how do you take footage in Filmora and get it to rotate? Hi, how you guys doing? It's really good to see you, Jay Wall. Hey, Jay Wall is in this group. Jay, you're a moderator. Feel free, Jay, to drop the link to the Facebook users, the Filmora users Facebook group. Jay has an amazing Filmora users group on Facebook that they talk about Filmora all the time. They answer questions. Some of the guys from Wondershare are actually in that group, so you can get direct answers about Filmora, as well as they give the updates when there's a new update coming out or a new fix. They always know about it first in the group. So make sure that you join Jay's Filmora users Facebook group, because it's really a really good resource. So yeah, so today a lot of people have asked me, like, how do you rotate your footage in Filmora 9? And I hadn't found a really good way. I knew it could be done, but we didn't really have like any good keyframing feature yet in Filmora, hopefully in the future. So I was thinking there's got to be a way to do this without keyframing one at a time every frame. And I actually sat the other day and figured out a pretty cool way to do it that isn't super complicated, but I'm going to go slow and show you so that it'll give you one way to do it. There's always more than one way to figure out how to do something. But I'll show you the way that I found out that I thought was fairly easy, that made it give you the ability to just sit there and spin the footage as long as you want. So without further ado, let me just change a few settings over here. Let me go over here. I am going to share my Filmora screen, and I will show you how to do this. I am going to take some questions at the end of this stream, so feel free to just kind of follow along here, and at the end, I'll let you know. I'll take some questions from the chat, and we'll if there's some other things you want to know about, we'll try to handle that too. So anyway, let's try this. So here we are. This is Filmora 9.5.1, which I believe is the latest one they have out. Iggy, good to see you, my friend. And what I did is actually license this image from Batman. I went to stock Adobe, so just so you know, I did pay for the permissions to use this Batman logo. So what we're going to do with this is we're just going to grab, this is just an image. It's not footage, it's just an image. Bring that down into your timeline, okay? And once it's in your timeline, I think you guys know this, you can left click, hold, and make it as long as you want, do anything you want to it. But just get into your timeline to begin with. And now it's just a static image of the Batman logo. Nothing special, nothing crazy, right? Let me shrink this down just a little bit. So what I found, the easiest way to start this process is to double left click on your footage in the timeline. And when you do that, it selects it. When you select it, in the upper left, you get all these other options for imaging, where you can transform, composite, do your chroma key, lens correction, add effects. You have your color tab where you can adjust the color, but you also have this third tab that is the motion tab. And that motion tab has preset animations. Now, a lot of you guys ask me this, like, Daniel, can I make something move from here to there to here to there? And there's no great way right now to do that. That's a feature called keyframing, where you can sort of tell of software the starting point and the ending point, and it'll fill in the blanks. Filmora 9 currently doesn't have a video keyframing feature. They do have an audio one. We hope to see one in the future, but for now they have these preset animations that allow you to add some motion onto your image. So what I found is this one right here is the one I like. It's called the clockwise rotate to zoom. And let me go full screen. You can see if I click on these, it'll actually apply it to this piece of footage here. Let me make sure I'm clicking on the right spot. And you can see that starts to rotate, but it only rotates a little and then it pops out. There's a one to the right of it that's just called clockwise rotate. That's more like a quarter turn. It doesn't quite do a full turn. It starts in a weird spot and then does like a just a quarter of a turn, and then there's a clockwise the opposite direction, which is another quarter turn. But what I found is this one right here, the clockwise rotate to zoom. If you just click on that, it's automatically added to your footage in your timeline. So if I hit play, you see it's right there. It's doing it. It's doing a 180-degree turn, and then it bumps out. So here's the trick. You guys have heard me talk about this. I'm going to bounce this footage. And by bounce, I just mean I'm going to click on export, and I'm going to send this out to any location in a file at a high resolution, and I'm going to bring it back in. Let me center this. So when I bounce, I'll just say Batman bounce. I make sure I check the settings. I want to do this at a higher frame rate. The more, it's just a static image. The more frames I have, the more control I'll have later. So I'm going to do 60 frames per second. I'm going to keep it up at about 80,000 kbps. So it's a fairly crisp image, and I don't care about the audio. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to set that for where I want it to export, and then I will export it. Now, you guys have heard me use the word bounce before. I come from a music background, and the reason I say bounce is because in the old days when we used to record audio, it's just like Filmora, how you have all these separate tracks. Filmora 9, you can have up to like 100 tracks. But back in the day, we used to record, and there would only be like 8 tracks. So you'd get down to your last few tracks, and you'd run out. So to create more tracks, what you do is like when you had 2, if you use 6 of the 8, you'd take 2 of them, like track 5 and 6, and combine them into one track. And that would open up another 2 tracks. So you keep opening up tracks by combining ones and freeing up the extra track. You send it out, bounce it, bring it back in, combine. That's why I call it bounce, in case anyone is wondering, like, what the heck is he talking about, bounce? So on this right now, you can see, so I just quickly, I exported that. So I bounced it. I'm going to bring that back in. So let me find it. Let me send my footage in my videos. And here's my Batman bounce. Okay. So at this point, I can get rid of the image that I have in the timeline. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to bring that bounce down. Now, what you'll see happening is now I have it, instead of it being an image with an effect applied to it in real time, this is now a video footage with the effect built in. So it's now doing this built in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to frame by frame find the spot where it rotates right where it ends up straight again, and right before it zooms out, before it starts to grow on screen. Let's stretch this out so I can see right frame by frame what's going on. So what we'll do is I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard and go forward frame by frame. Right about there is straight, that one. And this one right here, I can see it start to grow. Can you see, if I look in the upper right, that starts to get a little bigger. So I want to go back a bit. And I just want to find that spot right where the first time it gets bigger. The reason I want to do the first time it gets bigger is if you look here in the middle, the way that Filmora works is where the playhead is, it's showing you the next frame up in this preview window in the upper right. So what I want to do is get that playhead to the point where like that zoom just starts, one frame gets bigger, and that means I know I'm between the frame that is the right size and the next frame here on the right is the one that gets bigger. And I'm just going to split this. And at this point, I can get rid of, I'm going to select the second half on the right and hit delete on my keyboard, and that'll give me a piece of footage that just spins like 180 degrees. And then it stops, okay? So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to select that piece of footage by left-clicking on it, all right? I'm going to just go down. I'm going to click on it to select it. I'm going to right-click, scroll up, and click on Copy. And now down in my timeline, I'm going to move that playhead right to the very end of this piece of footage. Put it right there. So you see how it's right at the end? And when I get it there, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose Paste. So let me give you the whole screen so you can see what I have now. So now what I have is 2 pieces of footage that are identical. If I were to play them, you would see this spins, it gets to that seam, bump, it's upside down, it starts again. So it's spinning, but here's the problem, right? Because it's like it was right side up, it gets to that point, and it flips upside down again. So there's an easy correction for this, though. Watch this. If I left-click on that second half, so we're clicking on the second half of this clip, and now I go up to the Video tab in the upper left, And on the transform tab, click on that. The arrow, if you click on the down arrow, that opens up that menu. Here's the rotate, right? And I can rotate this as much as I want. And in this case, what I want to do is I'd like to rotate this 180 degrees. Let me scroll out so you can see the whole window. Full screen. So now what happens is, instead of it being upside down, see right there, right now I'm dragging my cursor over the merge of those two spots. Before I did that return, if I put this back, I'm going to move that back, it was upside down. But if I just take that rotate and say I want it to be 180 degrees, completely the other direction, now what happens when I play it, it looks like one continuous motion with that Batman logo continuing to spin. Can you see what that did? So I now have a full 360 degrees. So that's step one. Let's get our image to go all the way around and back where it started. So now what we're going to do is let's shrink our screen down so that we have plenty of room on our timeline. I'm going to drag that left click up top here, and I'm just going to hold and pull that down so it's smaller. And now I'm going to select the first piece of footage by clicking on it. I'm going to hold the control key on my keyboard, and then I'm still holding control. I'm going to click the second one. And if you look, now both of these are highlighted. See how they have a little white line around them? If I click one or the other, I'm selecting either one. But if I click one, hold control and click the other one, now I've selected both of them. And while I'm here, I'm just going to right click and I'm going to choose copy. Now my playhead is right at the end. Can you see it's right at the end here of the second piece? Here's another key. I love keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut here that is holding the control key and then hitting the V. V is in Victor key. Boom. And it puts those two right there and puts the playhead at the end. If I want to add another pair of those, I do it again. If I want to add a bunch, I just keep hitting V. I'm holding control and hitting V. And what that does is gives me a bunch of these. So now when I go back to the beginning of my footage, I've created a sequence where this Batman logo is sitting there and spinning around in a circle. Do you see that? How cool is that? You could do this with anything. I'm doing it with a logo, but you could take a piece of your footage and you could start to spin it. The limitation would be, obviously, when you select a piece of footage, when you get to the second clip, it's going to repeat that piece of footage. But a lot of times people just want to spin something quickly and have it go out of frame, or spin quickly and then go on to something else. This is the perfect way to do that. Grab a section, flip it, and spin it. But there's more to this, right? That's kind of cool. Let me teach you some more tricks to get this all into a piece of footage that you can use. So the first thing we're going to do is let's go back to the bounce, all right? Here's these. I put a random number of these here in the timeline. What I'm going to do is, now I've got all these spinning. They're all separate sections, but I want to get this into one piece of controllable footage. So I'm going to click Export, and let me find the center here so you can see a little better. And I'm going to call this Batman Bounce. I already bounced the first one. I'll call this Bounce 2. Right? Let's make sure that we're at a high frame rate and a decent bit rate. 60 frames per second, 80,000 kbps is pretty good. There's no audio, so I don't care about that. And then let's export that out. Now, while we're bouncing this out, what'll happen is it'll put all those little pieces together so that we'll have one video file that we're not asking Filmora to do anything other than just play a single video file when we bring it back in. Instead of having all those little pieces or having effects added to each one of those little pieces that can bog your system down, bounce the footage out at a high res and a high bit rate and bring it back in. And I've had people ask me, like, Daniel, why do you bounce things at like a high res and a high bit rate? And the main reason I do that is I don't want it to get degraded. Every time we bounce something or send it out and bring it back in, editing software adds a little bit of compression unless you're editing in RAW, but that's a different question. So you really want to keep it at a really high bit rate so the copies you're making, because you're basically making copies, are really crisp copies. So every copy you make of the thing you're putting together comes back and it's a very high res. A lot of times I'll bounce out at 4K, even if I'm filming in 1080, and bring it back in for like the highest resolution I can possibly get, the most amount of pixels. So that's what you want to do, get that bounce. So let's get back here. So when we get that piece of footage all bounced, is that done? Yeah, so here it is. Now we've bounced it. Let's go back, go to the file where we just bounced all of this to. There's Batman Bounce 2, and bring it in. So now everything in our timeline, I can highlight and I can delete. And let's bring down the Batman 2. Okay, so now what I have is one piece of footage that's just sitting here, rotating, going around in circles, having a good old time. It's kind of funny, huh? This is just a nice, simple trick. I've now got a rotating piece of footage. But a lot of you are probably saying, well, that's great, Daniel, but there's other things I've seen you do. How do we get it to go faster? How do we get it to pop up on screen? Well, first thing you want to do is if you're thinking about trying to get it to go faster, there's two things you can do. If you highlight that section of footage just by clicking on it, there's a little speed ramp right here, a speed controller that you can click on fast, and it'll give you a few presets like twice as fast, 4 times as fast, 8 times as fast, 20 times as fast. That's an easy way to speed it up. Or you can right-click on the footage in your timeline, go up to speed and duration, and then a window opens up where you can say, all right, I'm going to actually put in an exact time that I want. Now, maybe that is 20 times faster. So I'll put in 20, and I'll hit OK. And as you can see, that shrunk way down. See how small it is now? Because it's moving 20 times faster, right? So every time you speed in duration, when you speed something up, the clip is going to get shorter. And when you slow something down, the clip is going to get longer. A lot of times people will have a clip that's in between two other pieces of footage, and they'll try to slow it down. And they'll say, Daniel, it won't slow down. I can't get that feature to work. And it's because they've got it trapped in between two other pieces of footage, and those other pieces of footage won't let it expand, so Filmora can't actually slow it down. You have to open up the track, move something out of the way, and let it expand so that you can slow it down. Or drag that piece of footage up into another track, slow it down, and then, do what you want to do with it there. So now we have this, right? Now we have this piece of footage that is now 20 times as fast, and now look at this thing. It's a little choppy. Let's render this thing so it moves a little quicker. So we've got this thing now all compressed down. We've asked it to go 20 times as fast. And now it's all still one single file, right? It's one single video file. It's not 90 different pieces, and each one has an effect added onto it, because that would make Filmora do a lot of work. And when you ask Filmora to do a lot of things at once, that's when it'll start to lag. That's when it'll start to slow down. That's true with any video software. The more you ask it to do, the more it's going to start to get bogged down. So if we render it, that'll help it move quickly and smoothly. And now when I do this, see how quickly that's moving? Isn't that cool? How cool is that? Boom. Nice, easy way to get your content to spin right on screen for you. Now, this particular Batman one, that effect I was kind of recreating the old Batman intro where it was also a transition where it would pop up on screen and roll back. That's a really simple thing to do too. If you left click on that footage in your timeline and then go to the upper left, you'll see that there is these motions. If you grab the boom motion and apply that, what that does is that kind of pops it out on screen. Boom is like it expands it out on screen, and then it pulls it back at the end. So the boom one will give you that effect of jumping forward and pulling back very rapidly. Michael, good to see you. Hey, Barbara, good to see you too. So that's a real quick in-out way to jump. And you can use these as a transition. If you build something like this and have it shoot up on screen and then pull back, you can actually have it, once that thing takes up full screen, you could have two pieces of footage underneath that split and let this sit in a track in top and have it shoot out. And when it pulls back, your next piece of footage underneath would be exposed. So you've created your own custom transition like Batman, where it's like, woof, comes out and then exposes the thing underneath. Let me just show you this really quickly. So now we've got this boom effect. You can see how small that is. Let me go to the upper right, and you'll see it just pops out, boom, and then it'll spin as long as that piece I have it set for, and then it'll shoot back down once it's done. So there it is. That's the Batman That's the Batman logo right there. That's the thing that you've seen a million times. Super simple, easy way to rotate your footage and have it pop out and pull back. You can add different effects too. Like in this one, I use that boom effect. But there are other zooms in here, so you could do, like right here in the upper left, we've got like a slower zoom. This one is the zoom in. So if I applied that one, what you would see happen would be like this. Let me render it really quickly. I'm running so many things at once right now. My poor computer's like, why are you doing so much? Render. Don't make my graphics card work so hard. So now what this is going to do, it's going to slowly, this new zoom will have it slowly pop in, and then it'll spin, and then slowly, it'll just sit there. Each one of these motions up in the upper left, they all have different applications. Test them out, play with them, see what you like using. That might do the thing that you want it to do, but you can use this in a bunch of different applications. So like I said, in this one, now that it's rendered in the upper right, I've just got this simple zoom in on it, and you'll see that this kind of just slowly comes towards us and spins. Kind of cool, right? So there's all different kind of ways that you can play that, and you can use different animations and motions on it. But that's a really simple technique. Sometimes when I do these, people go, "Oh, that seems really hard." But I mean, I just showed you guys how to do it. I took my time. I walked you through each step. It takes a couple of minutes. It's probably 3 or 4 minutes to do the whole thing you wanted to do. And now you can have your own cool, even if you have your own custom logo and you wanted to switch in between 2 pieces of footage, you could have your logo spin out, jump. You could even have it hang, and then you could come back. That's another thing you can do too. Let me show you this. I haven't tried this one yet, but if you wanted, you could, can you guys see this okay? You could put, let's say this thing jumped out, right? Let's say this thing came out and it came towards you. You could get to a point where that logo was square in the middle. Let me stretch this out so I can see all the frames, right? Maybe somewhere in there. What you can do is you can right click on this here and, let me make sure you can see the whole thing. Right. Is there a better section to see this? Nah, it's a little over to the right. Let me see if I can move the time frame here just so you can see it a little bit. I want to make sure you can see. So right here, what you can do, if you right click on your footage and you go up to add freeze frame, what that does is, see that little gray area that just created? It will freeze whatever is in the footage at that moment, and now it'll just sit there, right? So you could actually create, I'll render this out. So you can actually create this to have it spin, get to a spot, add a freeze frame so it spins at you, stops, and stares you in the face, and then it could spin its way back out, and do that. So there's always a new trick and new technique to layer things in. I think sometimes people all ask, hey, is there one way to do something, Daniel? What button do I push? And I tell people, hey, if Filmora doesn't have that exact feature, figure out what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get something to spin and you're trying to get it to go, shoot out on screen, see if Filmora has a couple of those motions and see if you can work with them together to create the effect you want to create. So in this case, you can see it starts to come out towards me, and once it hits that gray area, bam, freeze frame, and it'll sit there until that freeze frame is done, and then it'll spin itself away. And you can, down in your timeline, if you hover over the gray area, you can control the length of that freeze frame by left clicking and holding, and that'll change how long it hangs in that area. How easy is that? Pretty cool, huh? I liked it. I love this trick. I've been asked this one so many times, like, Dan, I just want my footage to rotate. Well, that's how you do it. So let me listen. I promised that I would take some questions from the chat. Let's see. Ingenious says, hello, Daniel. How you doing? Good to see you. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop something in the chat. I'm happy to give you a little assistance on any of the questions you have about this effect or something else that you may be wrestling with. Learn Along, good to see you here too, my friend. Oh, Learn Along, I should mention that we have a channel memberships. If you look directly under this live stream, if you're on desktop, I don't think they do it on mobile, but there's a join button, and in the description of this live stream, I think, I have to look, make sure I did the right thing. Yeah, there's a link to how to become a channel member. It's a really good deal. It's $4.99 a month. It has its own private Facebook group where we talk strategy. We figure out how to do things in Filmora. We figure out how to do better edits. We have our own private live streams in there where it's just a few of us get together and pull up channels and talk about things. That's a great place to hang out. If you're interested in doing, and like a lot of times people ask me, like, Daniel, can you look at my video and give me tips? I don't do that on my channel, but I do that for channel memberships where they can drop their content right inside of my group and say, could you help me with this? I'm having trouble. And then we can actually post some of the footage and work things out. It's really, really helpful. Did I see Tish out there? I also see Jeremiah. Good to see you, pal. Hiking with Gus, good to see you too. Let's see. Do we have any? Could you teach me how to use divided screen in Filmora? Divided screen, like the split screen? Yeah, I can show you real quick. There's a bunch of ways to do split screen. Let me show you here quickly. If you are, let me do this. Let me just hit, let me get some out of the way. If you're doing a divided screen, I'm going to get rid of this footage right from here. So now we have, let's say, this Batman bounce. So you could do it a couple of ways. You could have like 2 pieces of footage. Say here's one, and let me grab one of the sample videos. So these are completely 2 different types of footage. If you have them stacked on top of each other, now the one that's on top will always show through in the upper right. If I hit the little eye insignia icon, it'll shut that track off. Now you see the bottom one. But if they're both in the upper right, what you can do is when this one is selected, what you can do is lock the bottom one, keep the one that you want to move unlocked, and in the upper right, when you click on it, see how it's got these dotted lines and little green dots on the corners and the sides? That will allow you to shrink it and put it wherever you want. So you can actually decide, all right, well, I want this section to be over here, and then you can unlock the other one, and you can say, all right, the Batman logo, I want that one to be over here, and you can start arranging these things however you want to do it, right? Now, these are 9x16, so you could you'd have to do a little balancing. An easy way to do that is like if you're trying to balance these, you could go, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to right-click on the Batman logo. I'm going to click on crop and zoom, and I'm going to change this to a custom zoom. So I'll scroll to the bottom. Let me center that so you can see it. I'll scroll to the bottom. This custom aspect ratio, this allows me to grab this and crop it any way I want. So maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll go, let's crop it in really tight like this. Something like that. Okay. So now you can see in the upper right, that cropped it to a different size. So now I can take that and go, all right, let's make that a little bigger. I want that to take up that much space. And then I can right-click on the other one, the bicyclist, click on crop and zoom, and I can change this to also a custom aspect ratio, which allows me to change any parameter, right? I can slide in, I can grab any slice, move this any way I want, and say, okay, I want you there. And then when I go back to the full screen, that allows me to grab this and stretch it up in my timeline and go, all right, now I've created a split screen where there's two things happening. That's a really simple, short way to control exactly putting things however you want them. That's the method by which you have as much control as you want. I've also had people ask me, Daniel, how can I do like 40 different images on screen? That's how you do it. Each track you have to grab, move them, compress them, put them on the preview window where you want, move on to the next one and add that and move it around. And you could put physically as many images as you want or pieces of footage, but keep in mind, if you put 40 different things up there, Filmora is now running 40 different tracks at the same time. So it's tricky, you know what I mean? Make sure your computer can handle it. The other way to do that is, let me grab right here. If you use, in the upper left, see how there is this split screen tab? If you click on that, this will give you all sorts of different split screen options, and it shows you all the different configurations, right? See, this is how they'll look in your preview window. So let's say you wanted to do one of these split screens. All you would do is, let me make sure I got full screen going so you can see it. If I wanted to do, let's do a 3, right? Here's number 3. I'm going to put number 3 down in my timeline. I've now set up for a 3 split screen, and I've got 3 different images here. Now, this is where it gets a little confusing. Some people don't know exactly how to do this. If you want to add things to this, you actually add them to your preview window. So let's up here on the left, let's grab a piece of footage and drag it over and drop it into section 1. Okay, so there's section number 1. If there's something else you want to use, let's say this plating food. Drag it, left click and hold, drag it over to the second section. Now that's in the second section. And whatever else you got for footage, here's some ocean, the beach. Let me left click, drag, and bring that over. And now I've got 3 pieces of footage that will all be playing in this split screen animation like that. See how they're all sitting there going? Now they're different lengths too. If you notice the bicyclist, I can't speak. He stopped first because the footage ran out. So make sure your footage is actually long enough. They're all equal, so it does what you want. But in your upper right, you can also left click on each section and see these little controls that show up. Like, let's click on the first section. This allows you to change the size in that split screen. You can also get into You also can get into the advanced controls, and this will allow you to really get into the depth of the split screen. Let me go to center. Hold on a second. There we go. So this is the advanced split screen tab. When I click these 3 little sliders, it opens this up in your center, and then you can really start playing around with like the lengths of the videos. You can stretch them. You can really control how long each thing runs for. But that's if you want to control the entire split screen animation. In the upper right, if you just want to control each one, let me get back to where these things are actually showing. Play it. You can click in the upper left, and then you'll have the ability to zoom in and zoom out on each one. So that's how you do. That's how you basically do split screens. Bring the split screen option you want down into your timeline, and then drag your footage from up in the upper left that you want to use over to the preview and drop it into each square where you want it. And each one of those has slightly different animations. They're kind of cool to use. I use it every now and then. It's a neat effect. They're kind of presets, so some of the motions are what they are. But it's cool. It's a real easy way to have multiple things happen on screen at once and not have to spend a bunch of time resizing everything. I want to stop time, the world. I hear you. At my age, lightning quick everything, I want to stop time too. I would have stopped it back when I was about 33. And my knees weren't so bad. Stopping time. So you want to do that effect. That's a really advanced effect. You want to do the effect where you're in a room full of people. Let's say everyone's talking, everything stops, but you don't stop, right? Is that what you're talking about? I'll think about doing that. The real way you have to do that is you have to use green screen in Filmora, because you can't physically. I get this question a lot. Can I cut myself out? Everyone asks. I get this question a lot, and a lot of people don't understand it, but I finally figured out what it meant. People will ask, how can I turn any piece of footage into green screen? What they mean is, how can I take the foreground, cut it out, and change the entire background? That's super advanced editing. You have to use an intelligent mask, and you have to be able to keyframe every shot, so when the person moves, the mask moves with them. Right now, Filmora does not have intelligent masking and does not have video keyframing. So that would be better served if that's something you really need for your project's edits. Then look at something like Adobe Premiere Pro, but I'm going to warn you now, it's an advanced edit and it takes a lot of patience. That's why most big budget movies like Avengers and the Marvel movies, they still to this day film on a green screen, because it's much easier for them just to chroma key out and change the background than to just film out in the open and try to cut those characters out. It never looks as good. It's never as clean. It's never as believable. And it takes a ton of work. So keep that in mind. Let's see. Let me try to scroll back and see what you guys have asked me some stuff. What about glowing edges, I asked you. I've answered this question a bunch of times. The glowing edges is what people call the scribble effect, where like someone's moving and there's a glowing lines that move with them. Again, you need the ability to keyframe that motion to follow the person in the foreground. Filmora does not have a keyframing feature. You would have to do that manually, one frame at a time, and move each thing with that person. That doesn't mean it can't be done, but like I did in the Thor hammer effect, I had the lightning follow the hammer. That was done by each frame. I'd move the lightning. So it's the same effect, and I've told people that you can do it. Make your neon lines in whatever software you want. You can't specifically make them in Filmora, but you could make them in Affinity Photo or Photoshop. Make a PNG file of your squiggly line, and then you could animate it by slowly keyframing it. But it's never going to look as smooth as like what I know you're trying to make, that scribble effect, because that's done in things like After Effects, where they have plugins that'll make it a lot easier to pull that effect off. Let me take a quick. Is it possible to add motions to videos instead of images? Yes, you can add any motion that you want to. We just did it. I think I just showed how to do that. So let me just get rid of some of the stuff in my timeline. I'll get rid of this guy here. And so here's a piece of footage, right? If I click on that in the upper left, you'll see I have the motion option. So if I click on, boom, let's say the boom one, and let's go full screen. When I play that, you'll see that, it booms out and then it shrinks back away. Short piece of footage, so the effect is fairly quick. But yeah, you can add those preset motions to either images or to footage. Can you control the speed of pan and zoom? Absolutely. I've talked about this a ton. Pan and zoom speed is dependent upon the length of the clip you're adding it to. So let me give you an example here. Let me go back up here. Let me go back to the media tab. Let me get rid of this. My first bounce is the longest piece, so let's go like that. Okay, so here's a piece of footage that's just spinning, right? So what I do is, if I right-clicked right here and hit crop and zoom, and in the center I hit pan and zoom and went, okay, I want this to start on a full box, and then I'm going to click on the middle. You can see the end box here. I've now highlighted it. This will now zoom in. So it'll start at this full screen and zoom into the end screen. But I've applied that to this entire piece of footage. So that's going to happen slowly over the entire length of this footage. Okay? But maybe you didn't want to do that. Maybe you wanted to have it happen sooner. So then what you'd say is, well, how quickly do you want it to happen? Go back to the beginning of your project and say, well, I wish the zoom was done by here, and just pause it and split your footage. Now you've got two pieces of footage that both have the same zoom applied. This one comes in quick, but then because we'd applied it to the whole clip, that same zoom is still applied to the second clip, but you just right-click on that, go up to crop and zoom, go up to, on the crop tab, which is the one on the left here, go to the crop tab, and then just, if it's on full screen, then you're all set. If it's not, hit reset, it'll put it to full screen, and hit OK. And what that does is this piece of footage no longer has that zoom applied to it at all. So it's what happens is when we, look at that. My poor computer's going like, what are you doing to me, Dan? You're asking me to run 7 things at once because we're also live streaming. What that does is it'll now apply only the crop and zoom to the first half, but the second half in there, wow, that really did. That bogged me down. Oh, I didn't have GPU acceleration on. Did I ever tell you guys that you got to put on GPU acceleration or you can bog down your GPU when you ask it to do too much? So yeah, see, this is typical. This is what I tell you guys. I have problems too. Sometimes I'll crash Filmora if I ask it to do too much all at once. I got to be smart enough to make sure I turn things on. Let me pull that back up really quickly. Yeah, so all you got to do is make sure that the length of the video that you apply the zoom or the pan or anything to defines how fast that zoom is. The longer the clip, the slower the zoom, and then the shorter the clip, the faster the zoom. Let me pull this up really quickly again. Batman bounce. Okay, let's go full screen. So yeah, here. So there's my piece of footage. Yes, I want that there. Let's make sure I do have my acceleration on. Duh. Please be on. Thank you. Yes, I will need to restart this project. Let's real quickly. I'm going to save this project as a VE project 1. Let's file. Let's open recent, and it'll basically restart this project. Boom. And now when I do that, I should have. Yep, I've got my acceleration enacted. Perfect. So now when I do this right, now it's sitting there spinning. Did you see? I just stopped there for a second. Can you see even a good computer, if you start asking it to do a lot and you don't have the GPU acceleration enacted, you can see how quickly it bogs down? I've got a decent graphics card. I've got a Ryzen 9 processor, but that puts a lot of strain on the graphics card. And even though I've got a decent graphics card, if I'm not rendering and using the GPU acceleration, it's forcing the CPU to do all the work, and it gets bogged down. You want to share that load between CPU and GPU. So I said here, let's apply a crop and zoom, a pan and zoom right into the center. I had split the footage, and then on the second half, I click on that again, right-click, not speed and duration. I right-click, and I choose crop and zoom. I choose the crop feature. I make sure it's set to full screen by resetting it. And now what I have is this will zoom in quickly, and then when it gets to that spot, it'll stop. One thing I should say is, you know what I should add here? Let me see, crop and zoom. The reason it jumped like that, I've done this technique before too. I got to reverse these because I went from close to full screen. Now what it'll do is it'll zoom out, and now the endpoint is the same, and it'll sit there. That makes sense. I've shown this one in a video before, how to use your boxes to get to one point and then hang. You just got to make sure the end of your zoom is the same size as the next piece of footage if you're hanging there. In this case, my second section was full screen, so I had to make sure my crop and zoom on the first section went from something to full screen, so it made sense to hang there, right? It was the same amount of space on the preview window. Daniel, do Zararudo, you're saying it right? Zararudo effect. That's the tick, tick, tick time stops. People have asked. I might try to do that. That's actually an anime thing. And to do it in real life would be tricky. I wouldn't be able to do it on any kind of animation, but I've thought about trying to figure out how to do that in real life where he stops time. I'll think about that one. It's on my list. I'll just have to figure out a good way to do it. Daniel, can you take a person's mouth bigger like you made from... I've asked this question before also from Blue Strike Pro, trying to change something change your face. There's a big thing that's going on right now on TikTok and stuff and on YouTube where people will warp their faces. We don't have the ability to do that, to mask and warp somebody right now. Or there's no immediate feature, and I haven't found out a good hack. You can absolutely take a mask and do 2 layers of the same track and then sort of grab the one layer where the mouth is and just, stretch the footage out and make it bigger. But it won't blend and warp the way I know you want it to. A lot of the some of the other softwares have the ability to put mesh warps on your footage, and you could drag parts of the face to the left, to the right. They're actually warp masks that allow you to stretch portions of your footage. Filmora 9 currently right now does not have that feature. If I figure out a hack that kind of works, I'll make a video about it. But if I don't think it looks really good, I won't make the video. I always try to make them where they're passable. You go, yeah, that kind of does the thing that I was asking about. Daniel, can we do slow-mo with Twixtor velocity mapping? There's no velocity mapping. You can't do that. But the Twixtor is have you guys seen the video of like the kid who's like, he dances, like the screen kind of shakes a little. The moves all kind of speed. Every time he goes to a pose, it's like fast and then it stops right there and he goes slow. I'm working on that one. I've been playing around because we can't physically map a speed and duration change. We can't have it go from fast and then have it ramp to a slower one. We can only do fast changes. But there's a way to pull that off. I think that's reasonable. I've got that about half done, and I promise I'll have that video out once I've got that looking good. How to make your face funny. That's what you just asked. So currently, scroll back, watch the replay. I explained that feature doesn't exist currently right now. 1 million subs without any vid challenge. A silly name, that is. If you don't have any vids, then why do you need to ask about how to do a video? Edit. Can you hack motion tracking in Filmora 9? Yes, and I've shown how to do this. You can hack it by doing frame-by-frame motion. And the way I've done it before is like if you've got a piece of something on screen, it can be anything, right? Like let's say, I don't have an element here, but even if like this, right? Let me find just an image, a sample color. I can do this with a sample color. Let me bring a sample color down. Let me click on that, and I'm just going to shrink it. So this could be text, this could be an image, this could be anything, right? So like if you wanted to, let's say there was a guy riding a bike across screen and you wanted to follow him. I think we actually have a footage of a guy riding a bike, right? Let's see if we can do it. Sample videos. Yeah, let me kill this. Let me see if I can follow this guy a little bit. So here's a hack. Let me see if we can pull off a hack. Let's bring that down into here. This is a guy. Let me just check the footage. I don't use these very often. It's a guy riding, right? It's a short piece of footage with a guy riding. And let's say you wanted text or something to follow him. You want to try it with text? Does that sound good to you guys? You want to try it with text instead? Let me grab a default title from the upper left. If you go into the titles tab and then click on default titles, just left click on that and bring that down into your timeline. Let's start it right about here. So now it's your title. So let's just go, let's double left click on that. And in the upper left, we can change that, what the actual words are. Let's just change it to text so you can kind of just see it and follow it. So what we would do is we'd actually have to start here. Can you see this okay? I think you can see enough of this. So let's say this is the spot I wanted the text to follow right in front of this guy. I'd put it up there. I'd stretch my timeline out all the way. I'm left clicking right up above in here, and I'm dragging to the right to make sure this is stretched all the way out. Now what I would do is I'd click up on the timeline, and using the arrow keys on my keyboard, I'm going to go the right arrow key and go forward one frame. I'm going to split this footage. I'm splitting the upper footage. I'm going to lock the bottom one so I don't split it. I'm left clicking on that, and see how it's up in the preview window? It's highlighted. Can you see the upper right? See how the text has a frame around it? I can use the arrow keys again to move that. So if I clicked to the left 4 clicks, 1, 2, 3, 4. See the text move? I've now moved that 4 frames. So then what you could do is down in the timeline is move forward 1 more. You could click on that. You could go left 1, 2, 3, 4 again. And you could slowly work your way through and say, I'm trying to keep that text in front of this guy. I don't know if I'm doing a pretty weak job of this, but this is how you do it. I'm just clicking 4 times. I keep splitting that text footage frame by frame, and now I'm moving it so that each frame that goes by, it's starting to move and stay in front of this guy. Okay. Now the trick about this is it's really tricky to find the positions. You have to have like a really good reference point because you don't know what you're exactly locking onto, and that could be tricky, right? That can be super tricky. So here, Let me click on that and highlight it, and then I'll go a couple more frames. I'll do it for a few frames here, but you can see now what happens if I grab in the upper right. I'm just going to grab this. Do you see what I just did? Here the text comes in, and I've moved it frame by frame to the left. So see how that seems to be tracking with them? You can do that. That's how you manually create a motion tracking. Just I stopped it right there. But that's how you create it, is grab each frame and nudge it along with that thing that you're trying to follow. If it was a car, if it was a person, if it was an item. A lot of times you'll see them in these videos where they're going like a house tour or items pointing the lines to things. That's how you'd move it, frame by frame. It's tricky. It's painstaking. I wish we had keyframing maybe in the future, but you can hack it. That is a way to hack it. How do you do chroma key in a particular area? You can only chroma key. You can't decide I want this portion of my footage to be chroma keyed. You apply chroma key to the entire footage or none at all. What you could do is double the track, stack it on top of each other, and then put a mask on it. Let me get rid of all this text. So let's say this is not a good chroma key. This is not a good chroma key because there's nothing. I could maybe his shirt, right? What you could do or his helmet is, if you wanted to chroma key one area, is you could double this track. Let me copy it. Let me paste it into the track above. It would have to be identically placed so they're directly on top of each other. And then you could put a mask on the top one, which would be up in the upper left. If you go to your effects and you go down to the filters tab, you go down to utility tab, you'll see that there's a mask feature. You want to left click on that, drag that down on top of your top track. And now you're actually seeing a masked track on top of an identical track. So if I turn the bottom track off, you can now see the mask. If I turn the bottom track on, it looks like there's no mask because it's the exact same footage. So technically what you could do is left click on that upper track, and in the upper left where you have the video effects, you could control this mask and you could dial it in on something, shrink it down on a specific area, and try to chroma key. Like, let's say you were trying to, say he had a green helmet and you were trying to chroma key out just his helmet. You could, and that was the green area. You could rough out a mask shape, and then you could just, full screen. Left click on that upper track. In the upper left, click on chroma key from the videos tab, and then use the eyedropper to go over and select. I'm going to select the color of his helmet. And technically, because it's not a great chroma key color, right? It's just pulling a bunch of stuff out. All right, maybe I could try pulling out a shirt or something. Let's try some blue. So the blue goes away, right? So now I've chroma keyed out his shirt based on this mask. And then when I turn on the track below it, you can see through it. So I could create a mask that way and chroma key this out so that I'm just pulling one portion out and allow something to show through. But it's really painstaking. A lot of times I think people ask these super advanced techniques that you'll just never use. I don't know where you use some of these. And if you need these super advanced techniques, I'm the first guy to tell you, listen, get the right tool for the job. If you think that Filmora doesn't have the features that you need, then get a tool that does. They're going to be more expensive. You're going to need a stronger computer to run them. It's going to cost you more money, but you'll get the features you want. So find the right tool for the job. I love Filmora because it does very intermediate editing effectively. It works well. It does the things I need it to do, and I can pull off some pretty cool stuff in a general sense. But I get people that ask me like, Daniel, how do I do this Marvel movie effect that's like $1 million effect in Filmora? I'm like, Filmora is like $69. Those guys are spending millions on huge sets to create that effect. And sometimes we can replicate them and get kind of close and make it passable. But you have to be realistic. Some things are so advanced, you're just asking too much. You're like, how do I win NASCAR on my bicycle? Well, you got to get a NASCAR car first, and then you got to learn how to drive it. And then maybe you can win NASCAR. How to make a video shake along with a hand. You mean to follow a hand? I saw someone doing this. I haven't tried that one yet, but it's the same thing, keyframing. If you were following something the way I just did with that text, if you were trying to track a hand or something and you had let's say a video of me moving my hand like this, all you do is find the center of my hand and keep moving that footage so that my hand was always in the center of the preview screen. And that's the thing that I use a lot. I don't know if you guys know this, but up in the right, I'm sure you've seen it. Let me turn off this other track and just turn on the one below. In the upper right, when you take a piece of footage, if you move it, you'll see that it locks in place. And a lot of times you can center things just by watching it lock. It kind of locks, and it'll give you these green lines, when, especially if it's smaller. If you have a smaller one, let me see. See this, what happens if I shrink it? See that vertical green line and the horizontal? Those will tell me when I'm dead center. So if I had, like, see this? Boom. That's dead center. While I'm left clicking and holding, I can see that. Once I let go, it stays center. So what I could do is if I had footage of me moving my hand like this, all I'd have to do is make sure I found the center point, and every time I did that, I would just have to keep bringing my hand back. I could leave a mark there. I could put a text element like a T and go, all right, perfect. Let me just add like a circle, an O. Like maybe I could do, here's an easy, let me show you what I'm thinking. You could do something like, let's get a text element. Let's bring that down. I'm going to put that above. I'm going to left click on that, and all I want is a 0. There's a 0, okay? So I know that this text element here is dead center. See how the 0, when I do that, can you see, let me go to the upper right. Can you see how the 0 is a little low? So let me see if I can move that up a little. I'll use my keys on my keyboard. Let me check this again. That's pretty dead center, right? See what I just did? All I did is I put an O. So now what I could do is, let's say if I had a piece of footage with my hand in it, I would just keep taking this, I would take the footage and wherever my hand moved, I'd keep moving it so that my hand, the 0 was in the center of my hand, and I'd be grabbing it in the upper right and moving the frame around. But that would allow me to do that new motion tracking feel where it looks like the camera's stuck to your hand. Just follow the 0, and then just turn the title track off when you're done. You don't need it anymore, so just turn it off, and then it would look like, no matter what was going on in the scene, it would look like your hand was staying in the center and the rest of the footage was moving around with it. Just a little simple techniques like that. That's an O. Yeah, did I say 0? Oh, I don't know what I hit. 0 and O. So there's little tricks like that you can do to get around to some of these hacks to figure out how to recreate some of the things you've seen and then do them. And then how to do them in Filmora. How to duplicate your video. To duplicate your video, right-click, copy, and paste it back up into another track. That's exactly what I did. If you're trying to clone yourself, I've got videos, tutorials on my channel that show how to clone yourself. Thank you for teaching you new things. Hey, you know, it's my pleasure. Listen, I'm going to move quick here. I thank you guys for stopping by. I hope this was helpful. I hope it explained how to do the rotating footage technique. Thank you for the great questions. If you have any more questions afterwards, leave them down in the comments section below, and I'll be sure to answer them, all right? You guys try to have a great day. The weekend's coming pretty soon here, so maybe we'll get some time off this weekend and we can actually relax. But if you have any questions, always feel free to ask them in any comment section of any of my videos. Be sure to check out the VIP channel members link that's down in the description if you'd like to become a VIP channel member. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.